It's about that time, baby, baby. Oh, yeah. Here we go, here we go.
The Sinclair Show is on.
It is on.
Run it to your friends, come on.
Come on, come on.
It's a moment of the show tonight. Mailbag is time. Sinclair is on the mic.
Once again, it's on. You're still troubled in your home. Got you tripping, don't know right from wrong. Send your letters to the show so we can talk you through. Get the answers to your questions because we speak that truth. Sometimes you doubt yourself, lost your health. Faith is on the fence, but you believe that Jesus knows your wealth. Keep it moving, spirit flowing because we're here to provide someone to lean on when you're falling. Wednesday, 8 and 9, and it's on. Once again, it's on. You're listening to the only morning show when people at night. That's right. It is the Sinclair Show coming to you live and direct. And people, let me just tell y'all that I have had an eventful day. And I was this close to saying, man, I ain't doing the show tonight. I just had some clients I just got through talking to, right? But you know what? Because it's y'all, I decided I'll come on through in the clutch anyway. Okay? Just because it's y'all now. If it was anybody else, I'd be like, man, absolutely, positively not. Wouldn't even stand for it. But I said, let me do the right thing. And the right thing was to be here for y'all because of the fact that y'all always got my back. All right? So I just wanted to let y'all know that I came through. Let's see what is going on out here in the real world. Okay, so now we good. I've just had to make sure some things. All right. Y'all know I had to put a little bit of lotion on my hands. My hands was a tad bit ashy, if you will. But first, before we begin with the message at hand for tonight, let me tell y'all about my day. Okay. So my day started off pretty good. You know, I had a few things going on, just a few. And at some point, I had to go resolve a problem. And I'm saying that because sometimes, you know, when you are in a particular role, you have to go solve some problems that, while I'm certain other people could have handled it, sometimes they require a delicate nature, if you will, and I don't know if I really provided that, but it got me to thinking. And one of the things that it was somewhat of a domestic situation that I was intervening in, if you will, and during the course of me listening to what was being said, if you will, I began to understand, and in truthfulness, I asked a lot of questions that I normally would not ask. For instance, you know, I wanted to find out what was the real cause of the discord, if you will, that was happening. And so as I'm talking to the people, the parties involved in the foolishness, if you will, I realized that perception is always the individual going through it reality. Let me say that again. Perception is always the reality of the person or people going through something. And so, as I was talking to the individuals, I realized that part of the issue was the misunderstanding of the significance of fundamental respect. Both parties agreed that there was nothing nefarious going on. However, one of the parties still felt disrespected to some degree. And it was the feeling of that disrespect that caused the person to act out of character, if you will. And now I'm telling you all this because it too may help you all. It may help you to understand that just because you're not doing something wrong doesn't mean you're not doing something that might be impacting somebody else. And so I had a conversation with um, these two adults and came to a decision with their help. But I say this because standing on business sometimes can put you in a precarious situation. Oh, y'all. There go your girl, Pamela Black. What's going on, Detective Pamela Black? Glad to see you, as always. Um, Fast forward. So that was an earlier incident. And then I had an opportunity to deal with some young people. And the young people, um, sometimes when young people are doing things that they, let's say for the sake of the show, they were doing things that they were not supposed to. There are 1,000 different ways that you can handle situations. Like when I was growing up, now I'm old school from the country. So when I was growing up, if you did certain things, my grandmother, my mother, they had one solution. And that solution, most of the time, the solution ended up with some switches. All right. And now for y'all young people out there, I ain't talking about the type of switches that be in your car to make it rise up and go down. I'm talking about them switches that come off a tree. However, we're in a new day and time. So the old corporal punishment is not always a necessity in order to get positive results. So as I'm dealing with some young people, some young adults, some young folks, if you will, I handled the young people much like I did the older couple earlier. I began to ask them a series of questions. Because, again, to me, it is not enough to simply know the facts, but I'm always interested in the why. Why did something occur? And sometimes we, as adults, we think the why is super simple. They did it just because they ain't care, or now mind you, one of the little clients, in fact, did say they were acting out because they just didn't care. And they don't care about no punishment or nothing. But that's for a different day. But I say this because many of you would be surprised at, oh, y'all, there go your girl, JC. What's up, JC? Many of you would be surprised at the impact of a simple conversation with young people where you require them to recount their own actions. And you provide them opportunities to understand a cause and effect. And so I'm telling you all that so maybe it will be helpful in your homes, in your situations, whether you got little people, young people, teenagers, or adults living in your environment, that cause and effect are important. And because it's important, you must ask yourself, what's your objective when you are trying to identify the best resolution? For me, it was less about the action and more about the accountability. Because if you can teach young people accountability, then when they become old people like us, they will already have accepted that accountability for one's actions is part of the equation. All right. So, anyway, I was just turning y'all on to that little nugget of information. So let's talk about tonight's show. If y'all read the headlines, it says tonight's show is about the United States approaching financial insolvency. For those of you who do not know what that means, it means, is the United States, for all intensive purposes, currently on a path to bankruptcy? Now, this is not about a political party. This is about where we stand as of today. Now, some of you, y'all, there go our homeboy, Jay Dizzle, what it do? Everything is lovely. Everything is lovely. So I want to say this because there are some of you who are not going to accept what I am saying to you all this evening. Because many of you are conspiracy theorists, meaning if somebody says something and depending on the person who holds the office of president, we immediately, Marcus Key, what's going on, dude? We immediately think that somebody is just saying it because they're from a different political affiliation. That is not me. The term insolvent, the term bankrupt, is a term that is assigned when you have more significant debt than what you have assets. All right? That wasn't me using no profanity. I said assets. Assets from the sense of the items that you have. All right? The items that you have that are determined to have a value, if the value of those items is significantly less than the revenue you have or the debt that you have, let me say that, then you are fiscally insolvent. Meaning, when one looks at the amount of debt that you have, it is such that if you were not a country or a business, one might recommend you to file for bankruptcy. And some of you all are saying, well, Sinclair, why are you having that conversation with us tonight? We're the United States of America. We absolutely positively good, right? Johnny said, that ain't what I heard. I thought it was a different world. So let me say this to you. The United States Treasury Department, a couple of days ago, gave an account of where we stand as a country financially. And they made the determination that we have 6 point something trillion dollars with a T in assets. Meaning an asset might be land, it might be gold, it might be some other minerals, it might be oil, it may be bonds, it could be a host of things. But when they tallied the value, all right, James Key, what's up? When you tally the value of the assets that the United States owns as a whole, it is a little bit over $6 trillion with a T. Cool. Unfortunately, the same agency calculated that we are 48 trillion with a T $48 trillion in debt. So that means we are 8 times the value of our assets are in debt. Now, well, Sinclair, what does that mean? That means if we were talking about a person, let's use old Uncle Senny Sin. If you were talking about me as an individual, and I said to you, I've got 8 times the amount of debt that I have in assets. If you were a financial person, you would say, Sinclair, you need to file bankruptcy. Because there is no way that you could pay back 8 times the amount of debt unless you hit the lottery, unless you got into an accident where you came up on a winning side of the lawsuit. There is no conceivable way that you could work yourself out of 8 times the amount of debt, provided that your debt was that high. And you would probably be right for making that recommendation. And see, each year the federal government publishes what they call a comprehensive financial report through the US Department of Treasury. These reports include what is called a balance sheet. For those of you like me, as a vice president of operations, what I do is I deal with assets, I deal with financial portfolios. I understand what the value of an organization is when I can look at the complete assets of it, minus the debt of it. And for instance, if your business provides a service, how much are you likely to generate in revenue? All right. So the federal government's net position is deeply negative, meaning its long-term liabilities significantly exceed its assets. $48 trillion worth of assets, and of debt, but you only have $6 trillion in assets. All right. Now, let me be clear before some of you all turn me into the people with them suits on. I am not saying that the United States is in a position where they cannot recover. I said if they operated like a person or a business entity. But the government operates differently from businesses. They can tax, borrow, and they can issue currency. All right? Keep in mind, it don't change the fact that you are 8 times your debt to your assets. So the question isn't whether the United States will suddenly declare bankruptcy. The question is, one, how did we get to the point where we are 8 times our assets in debt? And if the United States were evaluated like a private company, what would its financial position tell us about the sustainability of the current path that they own? All right. The federal balance sheet, the annual federal report, lists government assets such as federal land, buildings, military equipment, loans, investments, and infrastructure. Those are the items that total roughly $6 trillion in what we call assets. The other side of that balance sheet are federal liabilities, including publicly held national debt, intra-governmental debt. And I want y'all to think about something, because I'm going to say some stuff that's going to make some of y'all feel a certain way. Federal pensions, veteran benefits, Social Security obligations, and Medicare commitments. All of those things are what we call long-term debt obligations. And the total liability of those are 48 trillion, producing a negative net position or exceeding your assets by $40 trillion. Why governments are different from businesses? Because businesses do not have the ability to tax, the ability to issue debt in its own currency, and the US dollar serves as the world's dominant reserve currency. Well, Sinclair, why is that important? Let me tell you why. It's important because when you want to figure out how a country might hold United States liable, look at what Iran is doing right now. Now, we, for whatever reason, following the president, went to, whether you call it an operation or a war with Iran, in some form or fashion, supporting either our own ideology and or that of Israel. And we proclaimed that we were bombing them into no existence, that we had destroyed their military, that we had destroyed their ability to do half of their normal function. And that's what the president came and told you all. Cool. Until Iran said the strait is now shut down, meaning the waterway that controls 20% of the world's oil supply, the Strait of Hormuz, they said is closed for business for everybody that is on bad terms with us. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because remember what I just told you. The last part of what I said to you all about the United States and its debt rate was this. The US dollar serves as the world's dominant reserve currency. One of the things that Iran did last week was they stated, we will let countries come in and purchase oil. We will let oil tankers come in, but the currency that we will sell oil in is the China revenue. Tatiana Matthews, glad to see you. Now think about what I said. One of the strengths that allows us to potentially have a $40 trillion deficit is because the U.S. currency is the dominant currency of the world. But Iran said we will only sell that 20% of oil that we sell, those millions of barrels, we will only take our payment in the currency of China. Meaning that it was devaluing U.S. currency abroad because they're only willing to take payments for their oil that they allow to move through the strait in Chinese currency. So the U.S. says, oh, we're just going to blow everything up. And what did Iran say? Everything that you blow up of ours, we're going to blow up the utility grids. And one such grid that connects the internet to most places is actually underwater. And Iran has said, what we will do is we will destroy that cabling system. So, what I'm trying to get you all to understand is if the dominant currency for the world is the US currency, and that is directly attached to our strength and revenue power, so that we're able to look and say, even though we have $6 trillion in asset, because we're the dominant currency, then we can afford to have $40 trillion above that in debt, because we'll always be able to generate enough revenue. But if something were to occur and the US dollar not be the dominant currency, it would put the United States in a position where we could not pay our debts, and thus we would become insolvent. Well, some of you may be asking, Nikki Carter, what's going on, girl? Glad to see you. Some of you may be asking, why would we let that happen? Well, first and foremost, think about assets. If we have $6 trillion in assets, look at what Donald Trump has done in the last 12 months. He went to Venezuela, snatched up the president under the pretenses it had something to do with narcotics, drugs, which we ain't seen nothing about no drugs since he went and snatched up Maduro. But in the process, he confiscated control over Venezuelan oil, which subsequently he refused to allow Cuba to get any of the oil. So last week, they're talking about Cuba ran out of oil and now they got blackouts. At the same time, what he decided was, I'm going to, remember, he was talking about he wanted to get Greenland. He was taunting Canada, talking about making them the 51st state. And you all thought that Donald Trump was somehow just mad in his mind. I believe, while it could be true, I believe it is more likely that what he thought he could accomplish was to take over 3 or 4 major resource places like Venezuelan's oil, control the marketplace of it, take over Cuba, and he could force an issue with Iran to where the United States and Israel would control the oil coming from Iran. That, my friends, is a gamble. It is a very dangerous gamble, because what has happened is what we thought was going to be, we're going into Iran, bomb it, we're going to kill all their leaders, and then we are going to somehow manage to control 91 million people. We're going into the end of a month-long process. Iran has proven that they have had far more missiles, different types of missiles, and they are defiant as ever. So now the question becomes, if you're $40 trillion in a deficit, what do you do? If Iran is successful in saying, I am only going to sell this 20% of oil, of the global oil, in the Chinese currency, how long would it take for us to be broke? How long would it take us to dig up enough oil from our own resource land? Because for the better part of some years, we've been saying that we don't mind digging, we just don't want to dig on U.S. soil. The environmental issue. Now, programs that drive the federal deficit are important. First, there's Social Security, Medicare, and healthcare programs. They are some of the largest long-term debt. I know what some of you are going to say. Some of you are going to say, well, if it's those things, just cut them out. Let me tell you why you can't do that. You cannot financially cut out Social Security, because taking of Social Security dollars from every working American's check, if you're no longer offering Social Security, you can no longer collect for Social Security. Gwendolyn Lady Elegance Pritchard, what's going on? Glad to see you. So no, for those of you who said we need to cut Social Security, you can't cut it. Because if you cut it and people say, I'm not going to pay into it, you don't have that revenue generating source. Demographics have changed. The ratio of workers to retirees is 16 workers from 1940s to roughly 3 workers per retiree today. That's important. People are living longer. I've got a theory, and that theory is there is a fear from global sources, not just United States, that because people are living longer and there are medical cures for things, that where people used to live on average about 72 years, now people are living to late 80s, early 90s. That within itself is a strain on Medicare, health care, and Social Security. Because generally speaking, most people did not pay enough into it versus the resources that they require because of high cost of medical coverage. See, we've allowed in the United States, instead of having a healthcare system like other countries, we allowed the healthcare industry to run global markets where in the United States, it costs you 3 times for the same medication that you can get for 3 times less in the UK, in third world countries, because it was a big business and people were getting kickbacks. And because people were getting kickbacks and big business, we adopted a healthcare system that we cannot financially sustain. Yeah, those things right there. See what I'm saying, people? Y'all thought I was just up here tripping tonight. Well, what about the cost of wars and military? A major military conflict and long-term defense commitments have cost trillions of dollars over the past several decades. These costs include combat operations, long-term medical care for veterans, equipment replacement, and modernization. What's going on, brother Mance? Glad to see you on the show tonight. And so when I'm saying these things, think about it. We went into a conflict with Iran when many Republicans and certainly Donald Trump ran for office on the Democrats are war mongrels and want to be out there all the time and just elect us and we won't. We go to Venezuela, we go to Iran, and now last week, the president and the ridiculous person he has in charge of Hespeth, talking about he's the commander of the war, whatever he's talking about, came and said, we require $200 billion with a B. 200 billion to be at war in an area we didn't even have to be in. There was no imminent threat of Iran getting a nuclear weapon. Let me be very transparent with you all. Annie Moore, what's going on, girl? Glad to see you. I just got to be honest with y'all. Stop the cap with everybody's trying to get nuclear weapons. So what? You all would be surprised at how many people actually already have it. Pakistan has it. We know Russia and the United States have it. We know at least 3 or 4 other countries that have them. So you're telling me you mad because that country said they want to get them? Really? See, the threat of somebody and what they might do if they were to acquire something that we have, that Russia has, that other countries have, it is to scare you and I. That's the shepherd. Look at my armor bearer out there just relaxing. This whole theory is designed for you to be scared. So when they justify, think of how many times the United States has gone into conflict and the attached narrative was because they may have weapons of mass destruction. Let me tell you something. A weapon of mass destruction is any weapon that can kill more than 10 people at the same time. You think for yourself that the only concern is a nuclear weapon. Well, let me say this to you. And hopefully the vehicles, the little black SUVs, won't Brother Man says sound like a car to me. Hey, you got that right. I'm about to turn y'all on to some information, and hopefully the black SUVs won't pull up outside. Here's the truth. Most people are not concerned about a nuclear weapon. Why? Because most countries are knowledgeable enough to know that there is a zero-sum game. The other part of it is, do you know how easy it is to shut down a nuclear weapon? Many of you may have never heard of EMPs. A EMP is a device that when set off, it kills all electrical current that is not protected. Yeah, that right there. So you're worried about somebody creating a nuclear bomb, but most countries know that you can hack into the average infrastructure of any country. Some of y'all scared to open up your computers at your job because you think that somebody is going to put a virus on your computer at work. It's the same types of computers that is controlling most of the infrastructure for your city, for your town, for your federal buildings. Yes. So the entities that wish to do harm to us are not sitting around hoping to create a nuclear weapon. They already have the capabilities of getting into our infrastructure. And we've known this for years. So when somebody says, oh, we're going to invade a country because there is the fear that at some point, within a year, 2 years, 5 years, they could have a nuclear weapon, ask yourself why we keep saying that. You all just told us last June that when you bomb certain assets of Iran, you incapacitated them from being able to make nuclear weapons. Now y'all back on that. Now you want $200 billion. Now you got the president talking about, I'm negotiating with them. They talking about we ain't negotiating. They putting up memes of y'all president talking to himself on AI, making deals with himself. It's ridiculous. And furthermore, I want you all to consider this. Most of you do not research enough things, so you probably are unaware of some of the things I'm about to say. The U.S. has domestically, it owns much of its own debt. But there are foreign countries who own significant amounts of our debt. The major foreign holders include Japan, China, the United Kingdom. They are the three largest foreign debt holders of the United States. Then you've got Belgium, you've got Luxembourg, Canada, Switzerland, Ireland, Brazil, Taiwan, Saudi Arabia, and Singapore. Yeah. That right there. Sean said China is one of them. Absolutely. So Japan, China, and the UK hold the largest quantities, but there is about another 10 countries that own. They round up all of the owners that are foreign of our debt. Just like those, how can I say it? Just like the debt that you have on a credit card, when you don't pay it, that many times you are paying just the interest. And interest payments on national debt are one of the fastest growing federal expenses. As debt increases, the interest rates rise. The government must allocate more revenue to simply pay the interest to its creditors. Think about it from this perspective. If you have $48 trillion of debt, not my numbers, those are the numbers just released by the United States Treasury. If you want to do the math, go out and calculate the interest rate on $48 trillion. As a matter of fact, let me help you out. Give me 1 second. What is the interest rate on $48 trillion? Well, let's see what it says. Let me give you an example. The interest rate at 10%, and it depends on what type of debt it is, but let's say the interest rate on 10% for every $50 million, you would have to have $5 million is your interest. So if you apply the same theory, $1 trillion at 10% interest is $100 million. If you were to do that times 48, there you go. Somewhere roughly around $4 billion, a little bit give or take, in interest. Now think about that. Just our interest rate is somewhere in the ballpark of $400 billion with a B. So meaning every $400 billion that we pay is just interest, has nothing to do with the principal. That right there. Just like if you have a loan, and if you have a credit card loan, and you just pay the minimum payment, you will find that each month it appears as if you haven't really paid anything because your interest rate. How long do you all believe we could sustain running up a tab of $400 plus billion on interest? Let's look at the numbers. If we were to say 400 and divide that by 12, that is about 33 $33 billion a month each month. If you take the 400 plus billion divided by 12, it'll give you 33. So that tells you that we are paying about $33 billion a month in interest. Not toward the principal, just in interest. So again, people, I didn't come up here tonight to stay a long time, although we're about 10 minutes out. But I wanted you all to understand and to pay attention to what is going on. And you have some that are making financial gains off us going to war. I don't know if you all paid attention to it, but 15 minutes before Donald Trump made an announcement the other day that they so-called was on some terms that they were going to trying to negotiate with Iran. 15 minutes prior, somebody made a massive shift in the stock market. to which they made $580 million in profit 15 minutes before the president makes an announcement. What they are looking at is generally if something is that seismic dealing with trade, somebody had insider trade information. Now, we don't know who, but we certainly know that somebody did. Because you would have to be the luckiest person in the world to move the right stocks around if you didn't know in advance what the president was going to say, to where you would shift and in one day make $580 million, where by all rights, everybody else lost money. We call that insider trading. America, let me say this. I don't personally care if you're a Republican or Democrat or independent. What I do care about is common sense. For those who served in the military and those who didn't, for those of you who care about your towns and your cities, for those of you that care about your state and the well-being of it, there comes a point when you and I have to open our eyes and we have to hold people accountable. No matter if we have the same political affiliation or not. Somebody knew something to 15 minutes before the president makes a major announcement. They make trades of stocks and oils and earn $580 million. There are time and time and time again when we are not holding people accountable because we are in a particular political party. I am an independent, so I can hold everybody accountable. You all have to determine what you are going to be. I asked you all some time ago, maybe 3 years now, I asked that you all would change your political affiliation to independent. And some of you said, I don't want to be an independent, whatever. I was not saying that because I care whether you're a Democrat or Republican. I was saying that because when political parties do not know or believe they know how you are going to vote, then they must look and see what it is that the American public most wants to occur. When somebody believes, because statistically speaking, most Democrats are going to vote Democratic, most Republicans are going to vote Republican, so they can bet. That's why you have gerrymandering. You have gerrymandering because they believe so strongly that if you register in a particular political affiliation, we can hold you to it. If you stop registering as either a Republican or Democrat and you register as an independent, gerrymandering won't work. You don't have to jump off a cliff for them. All you got to do is say, I'm an independent and register that way. Then when you go in the booth, you vote for whoever your conscience tells you to. Listen, people, I'm getting ready to get up off here because I know tonight was not one of those salacious types of topics. Tonight there was nothing juicy, wasn't nobody cussing nobody out, wasn't nobody getting fired, this wasn't a male versus female type of show. But it was significant. And many of you may not realize it tonight. But you will realize it if you open your eyes and see the direction that the country is going to. who you are politically affiliated with will not matter if we have sold the country down the river. Who you are politically affiliated with will not matter if the value of the dollar drops to the second or third lowest. The name of your political affiliation won't have any bearing if people get to a point where they realize that America has such significant debt that there is a need to lock us into situations that we cannot or create our own currency, and the dollar is not the currency of choice for the rest of the world. Only thing that has to happen is the world to get tired of us. The day that the world gets tired of us and decides no more, your political affiliation won't matter. So you need to protect whatever your vision is today by doing what makes sense. Anyway, people, it's time for me to go. Ain't no fanfare about it. I'm tired. I done peeped y'all on game. Whatever you do, it's up to you. But common sense matters. I'm out.
It's about that time, baby, baby. Oh, yeah.